The water that makes you lose your way. The water seems still, reflecting only the sky, but each step closer distorts the surrounding world. Paths disappear, trees shift, and the mind begins to wander. Those who approach feel the urge to flee, but each movement only distances them from reality, and getting lost there could be permanent. No one who has approached the water has ever returned the same. Paths disappear, memories become confused, and even time seems distorted. Some say they hear distant laughter, others swear they feel invisible hands guiding them to nothingness. And would you dare approach knowing that each step could erase not only your direction, but also memories, identity, and everything you consider safe? What awaits you is more than confusion. It is oblivion. In the village by the water, stories circulate in whispers. Tales of travelers who never found their way back. Some disappearing without warning, others returning disoriented, with lost eyes and confused memories. The water reflects the calm sky but hides invisible traps, paths that rearrange themselves, and each step seems to guide the mind to places that do not exist, leaving those who dare approach at the mercy of an ancient and unpredictable force that controls direction, perception, and reality. Elias decided to explore the riverbank, curious and cautious, each step increasing the feeling of strangeness as the world around him seemed to bend. Familiar trees shifted, trails disappeared, and the sound of the water seemed to whisper his name, confusing his mind. A coldness coursed through every fiber of his body, and he realized that the river was not just an ordinary body of water, but a force manipulating space, time, and thoughts, making it impossible to distinguish a safe path from a trap. Each movement taking him further away from reality and reason. Elias moved further into the riverbank, feeling each step lost in illusions that seemed real, as if the river had a life of its own, shaping the environment around him. Distorted reflections appeared in the water, showing not only his face, but fragments of memories that weren't his, unfamiliar faces that seemed to plead for help. The cold intensified, and every sound turned into a whisper, echoing his own name in impossible ways. He realized that the river was not only confusing paths but beginning to invade his mind, challenging his sanity and his self-perception. The river seemed to react to Elias's every movement, its banks widening and narrowing as if they had a will of their own, making it impossible to perceive where he was. The water reflected distorted shapes, shadows that moved intentionally, and faces that would disappear when he blinked. Each step increased the feeling of disorientation, as if he were trapped in an invisible labyrinth. The wind carried indecipherable whispers, while an ancient presence seemed to watch and choose the exact moment to make him completely lost, leaving only fear and confusion as guides. Elias tried to orient himself, but every direction seemed to lead him to the same point, as if the river were controlling him. The trees and stones shifted, creating impossible labyrinths, and the water reflected images that confused his memory, showing moments that never existed. The cold gripped his bones, and the feeling of being watched intensified, making it impossible to distinguish reality from illusion. Every step he took was met with invisible resistance, and he realized that the more he tried to escape, the deeper he sank into a trap he could neither understand nor challenge. The wind died down, leaving a heavy silence that made every sound more intense, every whisper more menacing. Elias felt his own footsteps echoing in the water as if another being were following him. The reflection on the surface fragmented, showing pieces of his body mixed with unfamiliar images, further confusing his mind. Each attempt to understand what he saw only increased his fear, and he realized that the river wanted not only to disorient him, but to absorb his perception, making it impossible to distinguish between himself and the space around him, each instant a step towards oblivion. If this interpretation is making you rethink this story, leave a comment below with your perspective. These videos are meant to provoke reflection, and I read all the comments. And if this type of content interests you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Elias tried to scream, but his own voice seemed lost in the heavy air, as if the river absorbed every sound, every energy. The reflection in the water now moved independently, showing distorted versions of himself and of people who never existed. Each step he took seemed to drag him deeper into the confusion, and he felt the invisible presence of the river enveloping his mind, controlling thoughts and memories. The feeling of being completely lost became overwhelming, and he realized that not only the path but his very identity was about to disappear within the treacherous water. The water began to shimmer strangely, reflecting images that didn't belong to Elias, faces and scenes from lives he never lived, further confusing his mind. Each step he took seemed guided by an invisible force, leading him down paths that vanished as soon as he tried to move forward. The cold became almost unbearable, and the silence was filled with whispers echoing inside his head. He realized that the river not only altered direction, but invaded his mind, erasing certainties and confusing memories, making any attempt to escape impossible. Elias tried to cling to any point of reference, but everything around him seemed to shift, as if the river were aware of his every move. The reflection in the water now mixed parts of himself with unknown figures, forming impossible images that left him disoriented. Each breath brought a feeling of suffocation, and the whispers became clearer, repeating his own name in a distorted way. He realized that he was not only lost in space, but in his own mind, and the more he tried to escape, the more the river seemed to swallow his essence. The cold intensified, coursing through every muscle in Elias as the water slowly surged over his feet, then his legs, as if the river were swallowing him. His fragmented reflection showed versions of himself, contorting and disappearing, blurring the lines between reality and illusion. Each step he attempted seemed futile. The ground grew unstable, and the whispers of the water now sounded like ancient voices repeating secrets he had never told. He realized with horror that the river wanted not only to disorient him but to absorb his identity, making it impossible to distinguish himself from the world around him. Elias felt the water rise to his waist, each movement becoming more difficult as if the river were alive, resisting every attempt to escape. The reflection on the surface fragmented into thousands of images, showing not only him, but faces of those who had been lost before, echoes of trapped souls. The whispers became silent screams within his mind, repeating ancient fears he had never faced. He realized, terrified, that the river not only confused paths, but captured essence, memory, and identity, making any return to the reality he knew impossible. The water now seemed to stretch endlessly, swallowing the bank and making it impossible to distinguish beginning from end. Elias felt each step being sucked into the river, his thoughts confused and fragmented. The reflection no longer showed only him, but memories of others who were lost, faces and scenes that never existed. Each attempt to escape increased the feeling of disorientation, and the old whispers became hungry voices that reminded him that no one survived curiosity. He realized, terrified, that the river wanted more than his body. It wanted his entire essence. Elias felt the last piece of himself being pulled into the river, his mind and memory slowly fading, leaving only an absolute void. The reflection in the water became a black mirror, showing nothing but silence and darkness. No screams, no resistance, only the feeling of being completely lost. Those who approach now see a calm river, but within its waters are fragments of all who were lost before, souls and memories imprisoned, a reminder that curiosity can cost not only direction, but all identity and everything one is. If you enjoyed this approach and want to continue exploring stories that are almost never told this way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now, click on the video that's appearing on the screen. It directly complements what you just watched and may completely change the way you see this story.